Good morning, everyone. Super excited to be here. My name is Wouter, and I'm a neuroscientist by training. And I've spent the last 12 to 15 years trying to find out what it is that an A player is different than any average player in the organization, and how you make a combination of A players into a high-performance team. And today I want to share with you the insights that I've gathered over the collection of 85,000 people globally, scanning scale-up companies, finding out in which growth stages of your company you have to find and activate what kind of talent to get the most out of your potential, out of the potential of your people. So today I want to talk to you about the A-player brain. I want to talk to you about what neuroscience reveals about creating exceptional teams. And if you forget everything I say today, I'm going to be a bit sad. But at least, please remember this. If you want to grow your company, you have to grow your people, right? It's the people that make the difference. It's finding the product market fit and then activating the potential of the organization, activating your operating model, and activating the people to be the best version of themselves, so you can yield sort of those exceptional talent from the marketplace. And before we continue, let me make the case for A players for anyone who's in doubt. So what's the A player impact, and how do we define A players? A players outperform the rest of the organization with a factor of 16. Right? So it's not just about being a little bit better. It's not about 100K more margin. It's not about, a few percentages more. It's about 2 or 3 account managers carrying the entire revenue model. It's about 2 or 3 top developers who are actually carrying the entire product. It's about 1 or 2 people in the operations that make sure that your delivery and your execution goes flawlessly and your customers have a fantastic experience. So I want to sort of get you into that mindset shift about what being an A player actually means, and that's getting the most out of yourself, not just by a little bit, but by being a completely different version of you. And this is where neuroscience comes in. The good thing about being an A player, though, is that there's a spillover effect. So it's not about you and your performance. It's also that when you work with an A player, that boosts your own performance with up to 15%. And if you have a toxic employee, obviously none of you would have that as your colleagues, I would assume. But working with a toxic employee will lower team performance by up to 30%. Right? So you get what you tolerate. If mediocrity is what you tolerate, you will get mediocre teams. And if you strive and if you have the ambition for an A-player organization, being the front runner in developing A players, activating A players, finding them in the talent market is extremely important. So how do they do it, right? So how do A players build that impact and have that lasting legacy, you could say, on how companies scale and how companies grow? Maybe I should start with how they don't do it, right? So what's the biggest mistake? And I want to sort of introduce to you the eggshell effect. I don't know if you heard about it. It's a little story. I have a 5.5-year-old son, and he's pretty spoiled. He has a very sweet mother. So he was given scrambled eggs every morning for breakfast. And that was his favorite breakfast. And he was eating scrambled eggs every day. Until one time, I decided to make the scrambled eggs, and I broke the eggs, and I left a little piece of the eggshell in the egg when I baked it. And I don't know, who has kids in the room? So what do you think a 3.5-year-old will do when he finds a little bit of eggshell in his scrambled eggs? He will start throwing everything on the floor, and up until this day, this guy doesn't eat scrambled eggs anymore. And that's how the brain works. Right? Emotional things, they have emotional salience and they become important to you and they become a model for how the world works for the rest of your life. And when we interviewed all those leaders about what they thought were the A players in the organizations, they came up with eggshell arguments. It has to be somebody with this kind of CV, that looks like this, that has this kind of background and this kind of experience. And that's all because once in their life, they hired this particular woman or man that sort of was successful. And they overgeneralized that one specific characteristic and now try to find that in everyone else that they try to work with. And this is not a data-driven approach, it's a very subjective approach, it's also not a very inclusive approach, obviously, and it's also a very wrong approach. Because what you think is defining the success in your organization is usually an eggshell effect principle. So step away from what you think defines success and get into a more data-driven approach on what talent actually means and how they make their impact. So that's what I did. I collected about 90,000 data points from 85 to 90,000 A players around the world. I put them under brain scanners to track their brain activity. We did hormonal analysis to find out maybe there's differences in testosterone or cortisol. We did genetic testing. Maybe, by nature they have something that other of the people in the organizations don't. And I put that all in a model, and maybe you remember when I was called on stage, so I'm owner and founder of BrainCompass, and we sell assessment tooling. So I would love to stand here in front of you and say, we found the model. Unfortunately, when I started my PhD on this topic, this is sort of how I felt. I created a model of all these variables, biological performance data, we put it in the system, and then all of a sudden, the whole model would break. We found new variables, retried it again, built a new model, and then basically tried it again. So I almost quit. Then we tried again, my professor called and he said, Wouter, let's try it again. We have a new model and still doesn't work. So I beg you, don't trust anyone who steps on this stage and tells you that they know what the specific characteristics of the A player are. There is no golden checklist for success. There are no gurus that actually know. One of my favorite quotes, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich? So people would start your company if they knew better. But we don't. There is no one-dimensional A player model. And that has to do with a lot of things, and I want to share with you two of our main observations. And that's, one is, when you're very small, you can carry your organization by yourself. Or one superstar can carry the organization by him or herself. So Michael Jordan was able to carry his team into 5 seasonal titles by himself. And basically the trick was, get the ball from your opponent, give the ball to Michael Jordan, and then you would win. And this is how founders in the early stages of their organization feel, and this is how, let's say, that first commercial talent or that first commercial director and a big hire that you have actually carries your entire revenue. But we also know that that doesn't scale. So there's many ways to look at how companies and organizations grow, but what we do know for sure is that you transform inside to outside, and that there's different challenges along the lifetime cycle of your organization. And there's no way that being the same person, having the same team, and making sure that you operate through the same model will actually carry you through all those stages at once. So it's not about finding that one-dimensional A player. It's not about just rehiring that version all over and over and over again. It's the constant renegotiation of who you want to be as a founder and who your people need to be to become those A players. And then I'm not talking anymore about just a few people that outperform the rest, but then I'm talking about creating A players at every level of the organization. Whether it's the back office, it's customer service, it's your developers, you get the most out of your people in every spot, and then you boost your entire organization to the next level. So it's not about finding those stars, it's about basically elevating the lower level. It's about making sure that the lower threshold of what you could be gets higher, and therefore by doing that you increase the potential of actually becoming successful. And that has to do with the following, and that's that there are no solutions, only trade-offs. It's not that you have one person that will solve it all. It is that you have to constantly battle between choosing one good thing over another good thing, and usually one bad thing over another bad thing. So I've been listening to a lot of talks today and also yesterday, and what I hear is that you need to have focus as an entrepreneur. But I also hear that you need to pivot at the right moment. You have to be transparent as a leader, but you also have to stand before and in front of your people if things get tough. So it's not about doing one thing over and over again, it's about holding two truths at the same time and then deciding on, in the moment, what is it that you feel is going to bring you the most success. So what's your strategic bet on making those choices? And that's where neuroscience comes in, because if you understand how you make those choices, you'll also find out that your own bias is holding you back. Because the one thing that your brain wants to do is to keep you in the comfort zone of your automatic behavior. Because that's safe, and at least until now you didn't die. But your brain is not here to make you happy, your brain is not here to make you successful. But then, if we know that, then how do we get from good to great, right? How do we go from surviving to thriving, or from, being an average player to becoming an A player? And that means that you, as a leader, as a founder, as an investor, growing companies, it's not about finding the right talent at all. It's about activating the talent that you have available. It's about getting the most out of the potential of your people. It's about finding out what makes them tick, and finding out how that aligns with the purpose and the impact that you want to have with your company. Insights from neuroscience show, and I think it's a staggering amount of data that we process every day. Obviously, these are just numbers. We could debate all day if it's 35,001 decisions or not. But I would say that you have to remember that the brain processes a lot of information. And if you would do that all consciously, what would happen? If you would have to actively think about 35,000 things a day, you would go crazy, right? You wouldn't even get out of bed, I assume, because there's so many things that you need to think about. So the brain has a solution. It will solve it on autopilot, right? It will solve most of the challenges, most of the questions. It will process most of the data based on how you've learned to live your life, which has a genetic predisposition, your firmware, your factory default settings, and over the rest of your life, you add experience to that all create this, if this, then that system. That basically means that if I see this, I'm going to do that. If I feel this, this is going to be my response. And this is what we call the comfort zone. And stepping outside of that comfort zone actually triggers a stress response, which is cortisol. You might have heard about it. And that's going to make you anxious, and it's going to make you insecure. But being that new version of you, or helping other people being the new version of them, means that you have to reroute how these neural pathways are connected. It's all about neuroplasticity. It's all about changing how you think the world works. And I bet you, we won't have time to go into that exercise, but when you have a little bit of time, I bet you can find things that you knew were true for sure. And after a little bit of information, you found out that that was actually not true at all. There are big choices in your life that you've made assuming something that turned out not to be true. A simple way to experience this for yourself is meeting my two friends. So who knows these? Because otherwise I maybe have to share a little bit about them in the background. Yeah. So these are Boo Boo and Kiki. So one is called Boo Boo and one is called Kiki. And now obviously the question is exactly, so who thinks that this is Boo Boo? 5-ish? Who thinks that this is Kiki? So research shows that 95 to 98% of the people believe that this is Kiki. So those 5 who thought this were Boo Boo, you stay behind after the session a little bit. We need to talk about some issues. So why is this Kiki? It's pointy, it's sharpy. Do you think that's a good reason? It sounds smart, but it's actually not helping your decision making, right? It's just your assumption, your feeling that you are now justifying with smart words. And if you are smart, you'll find a business case, you'll find an Excel spreadsheet, you'll find an AI algorithm that will constantly reinforce what you already believe to be true. And that's how the brain works. It makes an automatic response, and then it justifies it using the cortex and tells you stories that keep you jailed, you could say, in that automatic system. And the superpower that we see in A players, the underlying what we would call meta skill that A players actually have, is to see this, press the pause button, and say, so what are we actually defining? What are we actually maximizing for when you ask me the question, who's Kiki and Boo Boo? So they don't immediately respond. They have the self-awareness, the self-reflection, and in some cases the self-management skills to say, okay, I don't need to act my feelings. My emotions are not a call to action, but my emotions are a call for reflection. I need to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if it's successful, I'll do more of it, so I'll scale my talent. And if it's not successful, I'll change. I'll update my mechanism, I'll update myself, I'll update my neural networks to behave differently next time. And that's what we would call the adaptability or the agility that we need in an age where nothing is certain except for change. That means that you have to be a great storyteller to yourself, so to say. So you see data and you sort of say, what's the story that I need? What's the story that will make me successful? Which is sort of the opposite of this guy, because this guy is telling the wrong stories, which don't work that well.
Thank you very much for this, for giving me this.
It's a player who...
also, my wife and my girlfriend, I mean my wife, yeah, sorry to say, I'm so sorry, my wife, Lizzle, I love you so much. Aya, I love you so much from my heart. Ne? So, must keep on supporting me. And thanks for to come to the game.
So you have to get in charge of the stories that you're telling yourself. So you have to say, Wouter, Kiki, Boo Boo, what are we deciding against? What are we maximizing for? What are we looking for as the key metrics of success? And if you're able to do that, you'll be able to navigate uncertainty, you will be able to navigate chaos, you will be able to say on day one, we're going to go left, and on day two, I thought about it again, but I think we should go right. So you'll keep the ambidexterity that is needed to navigate a rapidly changing world. Okay, so how do you do it? So for those who wanted more practical tips, let me give you the 3-minute version of how we make A players, right? How we activate them. There's 3 things that you need to do. You need to define the vision of success. It's your company, it's your vision, it's your strategic bet. So you have to say what puzzle they are going to have to be solving. So very clear on your first instructions. Tight, loose, tight. Tight on the instructions, loose on how they do it, tight on the follow-up on are you still in line with what we're here supposed to do. And that means by defining a vision of success, you have to realize that if they don't understand what you want them to maximize for, that's the biggest performance killer there is. And you do it by organizing the work, not the people. So don't think about the people in your company, think about the work that needs to be done, and then find the people to do it. You need to agree on input, not on output. I don't like KPIs at all, because they don't create a shared responsibility on how we get to our targets. So you as a leader also need to help them understand what they need to do, and finally, what they need to do on a behavioral level. Right? So you have to be clear on what is expected, and they can sign up for it or not. And not is also an option, but it's your company, it's your vision. You have to align on their growth ambition, because if they say yes, you have to find out, so what's the ambition of the company and what's the ambition of the A player and where does it overlap? What's the shared ambition? How can I help you grow? Because A players and talent will choose to work for the leader that fuels their ambition. You can only buy so much talent, but if they know they will grow with you, and they will become the best version of themselves, that's when they will join your company. You do that by helping them understand the potential. You do that by helping them understand who they could be. And you do that by being a launchpad leader that helps them get that talent out into their outer game in how they show up. Life is not about finding yourself, it is about creating yourself. Here's a practical tip on how you could do it. There's many, this is my favorites. You give them a talent impact statement and you ask them, who do you want to be? What do you need to be doing for that? What's the impact that you have by doing what? And then you help them define the cost price they're willing to pay. What are you willing to sacrifice to be the person that you want to be in the future? And then you'll make it practical in a few next steps. And this is part of your performance management system. And finally is you have to personalize your leadership strategy. So realize that you don't treat talent like you want to be treated. You treat talent like they want to be treated. So you learn about them. And you learn about the first team they were in. How they were treated as a child between 0 and 3 years old actually defines on how you should give them the safety for growth and experimentation later in life. Psychologists call this attachment systems. Maybe you've heard about it. If not, ask ChatGPT. But attachment systems define whether or not you want to work independently or collaboratively, and if you're self-confident or self-critical. And that means that there's 4 different versions of talent that you need to activate in 4 different strategies. You have optimists, you have helpers, you have achievers, and you have go-getters. And if you don't understand the attachment mechanism in your people, you won't be able to give them the safety to grow and experiment into new people, into new versions of themselves. And that would be the final tip. To become the Launchpad leader, you have to make those people feel safe, feel seen, feel soothed when things go wrong, feel special, this is why you are here, and feel supported in their growth journey. And with that, I leave you with 3 practical tips on how to activate your future A players, and I invite every one of you to join the movement, embrace the future, and think talent first. Thanks a lot for your time today.